Hey, I'm Eric Monacelli. I'm the Director of Communications at Infinity Ward.
Okay, nice. So Eric, what do you showed off a mission from Infinite Warfare today where we saw a very interesting door opening system that's very different from anything we've seen in Call of Duty before. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a 3 year development cycle on this game, so it's given us a lot of time to explore new technologies and implement new systems into the gameplay. One of the ones that we're actually really proud of is our door pieing system. It's not really the technical term for the system, it's more the military term. We went to the military and talked to some of the consultants about how they breach doors nowadays. What you used to do in the past would you charge some explosive on a door, blast it open, and go in. It actually creates a lot of distraction. It can be very, rouses attention really easily. So now they have a little bit more systematic approach to it. They'll put a person on the left, person on the right, person in the middle. The person in the middle will call out how they want to approach the door. If you want to go in slowly and maybe, just peek, or if you want to go in fast, kick it down, or if you want to go in with a flashbang, they will call out how you engage. And so that system is in our game, and we're really proud of it. We think it'll give players a lot more control and a lot more agency.
Okay, great. So you worked closely with the military on aspects of Infinite Warfare, and we saw that a little bit with your new AI movement system, what the soldiers are doing on the battlefield. Uh, what is that like now?
Yeah, so we added sort of like combat states, we're calling them. So there's we've added battle chatter and sort of a frantic state or a relaxed state to the soldiers. In the past, whenever you engaged with your fellow soldiers on a battlefield, a lot of them would just rush into the battle and be like the most skilled guy ever and just calmly jog. Again, it's cool. It looked cool, but it didn't feel human. So we wanted to ground it. We wanted to make it more relatable. When you go and fight these wars, you have recruits, you have fresh newbies that are you're probably a little scared when they first get into combat, and then you have the veterans who are a little bit more self-assured and will go in confidently. So you'll see the non-player characters in front of you do things like that. They'll move in a way where they'll either be frantic or they'll be really reserved and sort of relaxed and under fire, or not relaxed, but self-assured under fire. And then they'll have battle chatter that'll like signal when a grenade's coming and for you to move out of the way and different things like that.
Okay, great. So how does the battle chatter system sort of work towards the narrative?
Yeah, so I think it adds well, first off, the characters can look at you now, so you have that human contact. You see the face of the non-player character, so that's a pretty big cool improvement. It also adds to just sort of the overall as you go through the campaign, you'll have different instances where you'll come around a situation and soldiers will tell you, like maybe you crack a joke and then a soldier flips you the bird or something like
Okay,
that.
which we saw.
Yeah, which you
Okay.
saw in one of our levels. And so like things like that where there's like some gestures or some sort of interactions that sort of grounded a lot more in not natural human responses.
Okay, nice. So this is a very human experience. Can you talk about how you accomplished that in such a far future setting?
Yeah, so I mean, we wanted to make this game as grounded and realistic and plausible as possible. We spent a lot of time thinking about our setting, where we'd go with it. Talked to a lot of military consultants about, is a war in space plausible? And everybody told us definitively yes. There are a lot of resources out there in space. History of war has always been a struggle over resources, so that sort of thing. It leads to conflict. And so that setting is very human. It's sort of our next frontier. It's where we're headed, that sort of thing. And we feel like this is a plausible future scenario for war.
Nice. And you got inspiration from Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down. How does that manifest itself in Infinite Warfare?
Yeah, I mean those are two of the movies that had some inspiration for us. There was a whole gamut of movies. We took a lot of aesthetic inspiration from sort of the grounded, gritty realities that James Cameron brings into his films, such as Aliens and Avatar and things like that. But Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down were two thematic movies that meant a lot to the story's narrative, insofar as Black Hawk Down is sort of the story of a group of grunts. They're soldiers that sort of want to all survive, get out there, want to make sure that no soldier is left behind in the battlefield. And that's sort of the approach you have when, you're faced with that sort of situation. And most human situations if you're
Right.
stranded somewhere. And in the military, when you're a grunt, that's sort of the attitude that we've heard from our advisors, that's the attitude you have. You always want to come back with your crew. And then when you get promoted and sort of become a captain, a lot of people we've talked to is like it's a very difficult transition sometimes, because you got to realize that there are some sacrifices you have to make, some struggles you have to make, and then sometimes the crew might not always survive if you need to complete the mission. And so that sort of journey as you go from grunt to captain was something that we spent a lot of time talking to people about, and those movies inspired us. And then we talked to the military and was like, is it like that? And they're like, yeah, it can be very difficult. So
Okay. So, Infinity Ward's previous games, lots of twists and turns in the campaign, constant backstabbing. But you mentioned Infinite Warfare is going to be a very clear good and evil narrative. What went into that decision to sort of change so drastically from Ghosts and Modern Warfare?
Well, we wanted to make sure that we told a story that had a very clear character arc. We wanted to define characters really, really rounded, rich, and complex characters. And to do that, we thought about how to frame it, and our narrative team did a fantastic job. Our lead actor in the game is also our lead writer. He worked very closely with the narrative team to help write the dialogue and write the whole game. And they worked together to really frame the story that is driven by, the events of the first 12 hours of a war. That's the sort of premise behind it, and then there's been ongoing struggles for a while. So there's a history there that you can unpack and learn about some of the other twists and turns. But this sort of context, this slice we're showing for the campaign, is that sort of it's a sneak attack that happens and leads into the events after it. So sort of like a snapshot at a moment in time in that period.
Okay, nice. Infinite Warfare, an immersive experience. Load screens are sort of locked behind things that are happening on screen. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we wanted to create a situation where the player picks up the controller, and when they jump into campaign, they never want to put it down. It's going to basically grip them and immerse them from the moment they have that controller in their hands. And we're doing that in a number of ways. There's some tricks we're doing to sort of get the right look and sort of create this nearly seamless experience. But our core idea for the gameplay was we wanted to start with boots on the ground combat, because that's the core of Call of Duty. So you're on the ground, you're fighting, and imagine you're fighting up this hill. You go up the hill, you accomplish what you need to, you get to the top of the hill, then your Jackal swoops in, your combat fighter. You climb up into your Jackal, blast off into space, go through a debris field. You're fighting in that debris field, taking out enemy ships, completing your objective out in space, and then you return back. You land on the Retribution, which is your home base, your flying warship that you're going to helm. You get onto the flight deck of the Retribution, take an elevator up. You're in that elevator, you go out into the bridge, you see your ops map, you pick your next mission objective, you go back in that elevator, go down to the flight deck, get in your Jackal, blast off towards your next mission, and then go on a loop over and over again. So there's this persistent hub, and there's this really sort of like gripping, immersive experience throughout the campaign.
Okay, great. So you mentioned the Retribution has an ops map where you can pick from multiple missions. Can you talk a little bit about the choices Reyes is going to have to make and the missions we can expect to see on that map?
Yeah, so we showed a little bit of a preview of our ops map at the Sony press conference. When you go out on the bridge, it sort of popped up, and you saw Earth, and you saw the moon, and there was a ship in orbit around the moon that you went and conducted a ship assault mission on. And that ship assault mission was actually a side mission. That's one of the optional missions you could pick that sort of will flesh out the game narrative a little bit more. It may provide some perks and resources to your campaign. So you'll want to engage in those, if you want that sort of thing. Otherwise, you can continue on the main storyline and pick the other targets there. So we had Earth on the map, Titan, Europa. There's other planets you'll be traveling and then getting off on, putting your boots on the ground and fighting on those.
At Comic-Con, you have a poster that you love, right?
Yes.
Do you want to mention that?
Super happy we were able to collaborate with Mondo. We worked with a UK-based artist named Matt Taylor, who's a phenomenal artist. He's got some amazing art he's put out over the years, and it's sort of a labor of love. It's a passion project to be able to create such a cool sort of collectible for everybody. So if you can get into our Comic-Con panel, which we all know how the lines are at Comic-Con, we're hoping that we have a packed house, and whoever's at the panel will actually receive a poster. So we're stoked about that, and it's a gorgeous poster. So
Let's talk a little bit about the weapons that we saw in the mission.
sure. Some of we put a lot of emphasis into building out very plausible weapons that have a future slant to them for the single player campaign. There's a lot of weapons in the game that are we have weapons manufacturers that are fictional, but that gives a lot of personality to the weapons. So there are convertible weapons. We showed at E3 one of our weapons was a Devastator shotgun with a pellet sight, and that pellet sight that you see sort of points on an enemy's body and will direct the shots towards them, the buckshot towards them. So it's a cool technical thing, that's sort of R&D is sort of making that thing in the real world, but we made it fictionalized to make it fun and put it in the game. And then we have other weapons. Reyes's main weapon is the N4V, which is this really, really elaborate and very cool looking gun that he carries around, and sort of like the signature hallmark weapon. So there's a lot of different weapons you'll be able to play with throughout the game, and we'll have a lot of info coming about them soon.
Okay, great.